listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin. To master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Once you walked in a forest of splendor in which everything you did and everything you thought was aligned. It is possible at this time to begin to return to the old knowledge. Intuitive healer and manifester Julia Griffin is here to talk about this unique time in history when all sentient beings, animals, plants, trees, and the earth are intent on creating this change. The wolves awakened her to the most incredible light, which opened gifts and brought knowledge that she longs to share. You are creators, and you are born to be creators of beauty, possibility, and joy. Join Julia on a journey into a beautiful and magical world where amazing possibilities exist. Let us help open the door. The Power of Inspiration and Awakening with Julia Griffin starts right now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin, and you're listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour and let us help you experience a higher vibration and a new state of mind. For those of you who are not familiar with me, I actually met real wolves and I could hear them. And that brought me into a state of attunement so that I could hear people's thoughts and energy and animals and plants. And I try to bring in speakers that can help us not only raise our vibration, but have an interesting point of view about how reality and their personal mysticism or spirituality works. So we have a wonderful guest today. It's Edwin Spina. So hello, Edwin. We're so happy to have you.
Hi, Julia. It's great to be here.
Good. So let's go ahead and let me share some of your bio so they can know who you are and what you do. So he's an award-winning author, healer, speaker, and mystic. He's the author of Mystic Warrior and Mystic Secrets Revealed, and the developer of Higher Self Integration, created to clear, align, and center individuals moving through these tumultuous times. He specializes in removing curses and entities. We're going to talk about that and how that helps you to reconnect to your highest self, leading to greater intuition, clarity, and joy. After becoming a master healer, Ed went through an extreme metamorphosis. After graduating with a BSc degree in math and computer science from Tufts University, Ed began writing system software for a computer manufacturer. He went on to receive an MBA from the University of Chicago with concentrations in finance and marketing. After graduating, he worked with various venture capital firms and started technology-based companies in the sports and music industries. Stressed out from his entrepreneurial ventures, Ed rented a video from Blockbuster that had promised to help him relax and, curiously, help him to recall his past lives. To Ed's surprise, the video changed his life as he was able to recall a past life in substantial detail. And this is one of the things that happens as you awaken. You remember your past lives. Thus began his 25-plus year study of mysticism, metaphysics, energy healing, and all things spiritual. He wanted to know how the universe truly worked, and that drew the attention of his first mentor. Through his relationship, Ed uncovered gifts his scientific mind would not have thought possible. After a few months, his primary means of communication with his mentor was telepathic. He lectures around the world and offers energy clearings in person and remotely. His company, Higher Dimension Publishing, publishes books, audios, videos that heal and enlighten and educate people. So welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. You're one of the people that political turmoil, climate change, disruption, but there's also a beautiful energy of awakening, which I believe will become stronger. So why don't you share your take on it?
Right. It's virtually impossible to figure out all the things that are happening in the world today. As I mentioned, people that you thought were good, maybe not so good. Sometimes the people aren't even the same people they were a few years ago. There's actors, even clones. It's very hard to keep track of what's going on. So it becomes more and more important to focus on your own discernment, your own intuition, and most importantly, to focus on the world that you want and not to let this mainstream narrative derail you or focus you on things that are either trivial or outright lies. So that's the learning that we're all going through right now. Focus on your own intuition.
So I would say for people who are interested in manifesting, one of the things that you can do is really focus on what would be a good world for you to live in, because we're all different. Like I want to be able to see the stars at night in a really clear sky. I like seeing animals. I like being outside. I like writing. I like talking to smart people. But you may have a completely different idea of what that would be. You know, another thing is I want more trees, less garbage, things like that.
Right. No, but we can all have that same world. You could be on the Mount Peak. There's one in Mount Pinos in outside of LA where all the amateur astronomers used to go to be able to see the night sky. And I remember going there one time on a new moon when the moon wasn't
Right. The only
shining.
time you can really see the stars.
And there were guys with these huge telescopes, 12-foot telescopes, and that would just have them focused on a certain part of the sky, and they let you look at them. And I got to see the rings of Saturn and the
Oh, wow.
7 of the 12 moons of Jupiter. And to me, it was almost like a science fiction movie because the power of these telescopes was so immense, and you could just see things that it just reminded me of science fiction. It was an
Right.
awesome time.
I think we have to get into what gives us wonder and what seems exciting to us because, you know, when I was reading your bio, I was thinking what really got me interested and to the point that I met wolves and they talked to me was I kept thinking, I really want to understand how energy works. I know there's something bigger than what I know. I really want to awaken to that point. And it's like when you're curious like that and you start thinking, that's really what opens up the spiritual world.
Right. Well, like Jesus said, you must be like a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. And that's the whole world of awakening, in that you must approach things with the wonder of a child. And that's what I've been accused of being very childlike, which is a good thing. Childish, not so good, but childlike is a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing that opens you up to these possibilities.
Oh, and I was going to say when you were talking about the stars, because this is childlike, but it's so cool. If you close your eyes and put your
Right.
fingers on your pupils and press, after a while, you'll see stars. Everybody has a different star pattern from the actual universe. Those are called phosphorines.
Right.
Isn't that
Okay.
just so amazing?
Speaking of the stars, when I was in college, before I was interested in any spirituality at all, I went to Tufts University, as you've mentioned. That's one bus ride away from Harvard Square in Cambridge. And Harvard is famous for having their co-op, which they call the Coop, which is a huge 7-story building, brick building with anything and everything you'd ever want to decorate your dorm room. So our whole freshman dorm floor went into Harvard Square to get decorations, and everyone came back with pictures of their hometowns and things like that. I came back with a picture with a poster of the Pleiades.
Right.
And I didn't know anything about it. I just knew it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. And so that was above my bed in my dorm room, the Pleiades, which I have an affinity for.
Yeah, I made my mother read me stories about them. And then later I found out that the Native Americans believe that the beings on the Pleiades are always sending us good energy.
Right. Yeah. I've only went to one sweat lodge in my spiritual career, and they brought in some experts from a different tribe that came in and spoke. And what did he talk about? The Pleiades. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
they
So it's
work with the
important.
indigenous.
And for you people who are listening, we're going to come back to what's happening in the world and how to get there. But when intuitives talk, if one of us thinks about something, the other person picks up on it. And there's sort of this sharing of joint memory, so you understand what's going on there. So I think we have to be detached about the disruption. And we've got to get pretty determined that we want to meditate every day and let more light and more love in and move in that direction.
Always a good idea. The last few years, I've been working closely with 8 ascended masters. And whenever I have a question on any area, I just go and meditate. And depending on the issue, I'll contact one or another one of the masters. And oftentimes I get a lot of insight just from that connection.
And then sometimes just because your thoughts change about something, there's a point where if you ask yourself, why is this person making me nervous? Or why do they have so much anxiety? Or am I reading this correctly? You learn to see something different that you wouldn't have seen otherwise.
Right. And that's another message is, trust, follow your intuition, and also follow your instinct. Instinct is a little bit more primitive. It's the base for survival in that. And I was working with this guy who promised the world years ago, again, before I was spiritual. I was just on the cusp of being driven to study spirituality. And I felt this bad feeling in my stomach whenever he was around. And even when he was not around, if he was thinking of me, I could feel it. And
Right.
then later it turned out he was just a very bad person who studied all the dark arts. And it was a while before I was able to elevate my spiritual power to be able to dismiss him easily. But
I think you're
yeah, that's
talking about that for a reason, because earlier you were talking about all the confusion and how difficult it is to know. And there's certainly just tons of that out there now.
right. Well, there's tons of misinformation,
And that's what I'm saying.
misinformation and disinformation. Like Mark Twain said 100 years ago, well, he talked about newspapers, but now it applies to the newscasts. If you don't watch the news, you'll be uninformed. If you watch the news, you'll be misinformed.
Yeah.
And it's never been more true than today. And that's my first recommendation for anyone who wants to get on the spiritual path or enhance their abilities is turn off the TV,
Well,
especially the news. Yeah,
I always say that they know more how to manipulate than people who know the spiritual truth, because we're never going to pretend like it's not going to rain for a month and tell everyone that, but they will to make it
right.
happen. And
Yeah.
it can go the
And
other way. I mean, we could all decide this is going to be like the most beautiful summer with the most beautiful weather we've ever seen, and that could happen too.
yeah, in general, the spiritual people are way more elevated in consciousness than what's coming out of the mainstream media.
Well,
With
yeah,
the mainstream media, yeah.
we're not allowed to manipulate like that.
Well, it's not so much we can use our own power to visualize the world like you said, world with wolves and plants and trees and stars, which is great. But in the meantime, they're giving you a world that's full of fear, anger, divisiveness, everything that we is the opposite of what a spiritual
Right.
person would want. And the only advantage they have is it's the repetition.
Yeah.
Every single station, same thing. Doom, gloom, bad things happening, terror, be afraid. Everything that they repeat it over and over again. So the easiest thing to do is just turn off the TV and go within, or just go out in nature like you do. Go look at
Yeah.
the stars, go hug the trees, things like that. And you have much more power than they do. And collectively, we have much more power than all the people trying to derail us and prevent us from having this beautiful world that's very possible and it's imminent. But they just have that one power of repetition and the power of habit that people have gone into where they believe something if they see it on TV and not if they
Right.
hear it from a guru or a true avatar. Oh, well, that's what he says, but it wasn't on TV. I don't know if I could believe that.
Yeah, I have
So,
a feeling sometimes if enough of us could move into the love vibration, all that whole world would just fall apart, like the illusion of it,
well,
like
that's
pieces
exactly
just
what's happening.
falling out. Yeah.
That's this whole time with all this, with so many things up in the air and up is down, left is right, black is white, all these things where opposites are being promoted on the TV, and people are starting to finally wake up and say, wait a second, none of this is true. No, I don't want to believe in a world like that. That's not how things are. My world is not like that. And as we go higher and higher, we've already reached critical mass that the world is it's going to change. It's a spiritual event that's going to happen no matter what. And so it's just a function of how many people are going to wake up when this dramatic change happens.
Well, and the fun part is that when people do wake up, they move more into the flow of life and life becomes better for them. And everyone who's awake, whether they realize it or not, they're actually giving energy to that group, and that group grows from that.
Right. More and more people wake up, and the higher your consciousness is just another reason to study spirituality and mysticism, anything spiritual, is that as you raise your consciousness, every time you go up a level, you increase your power exponentially. So you may
Right.
go 10, 100, 1,000. And
Mm.
that explains how would say some master only being 7 levels up, that they can influence 1 million people or 10 million people versus someone who's operating at the ground level, sea level, so to speak, in
Right.
consciousness. So all the people on the higher vibrational world are on our side. They're on the side of enlightenment and helping people to be the best they can be. So it's inevitable we win.
Yeah, it's a group endeavor this time around, because we had Jesus and Buddha in the age of Pisces as we moved into that 2000-year cycle. And this time it's like it has to be a group of awakened people. It's not just one or two with a worldwide
Right.
teaching. Okay, so one of the things I want to talk to you about is I know that you get rid of entities and demons, and that may sound frightening to people, but it's a lot more common than what people think. So I'm going to say it in a way that I think will make sense. A lot of times people will call me and say, "Oh, my back is killing me. I woke up and I can hardly walk. My left foot is killing me." And I'll say, "All right, who did you see right before this happened?" And
Right.
they'll tell me, and I'll say, "That person is attached to your body. Why would they do that? They're my friend. They love me." I'm like, I don't know. Maybe they wanted energy. Maybe they were jealous. Maybe it's what
Right.
they do. Maybe they're a vampire. But I mean, it happens all the time. So will you explain a little bit of that to our listeners? Because it is important.
Right. There can be another human here living in our human existence that can tap into your energy and try to suck it out of you. That's true. The thing that's more onerous is when you have a practice, the evil dark arts practitioner who will formally conjure up a curse on you. Usually it takes 3 of these evil magicians to get together and do it. And then when they do that, they summon entities or demons, literally, that go and harm the person. And these entities are uh, at a level that they can see the person's weakness. So whatever weakness you have, they'll exacerbate it. If you're a little sad, they'll turn you into a massively depressed. If you're a little angry, they'll turn you into a raging anger person. So they go about your exploiting your weaknesses. So in one sense, they're illuminating areas where you can improve. But on the other hand, they're making your life miserable. So that's when you can call upon someone like me, and that's what I do every day. That's what I'm known for in the spiritual healing community, is to take out those entities, get rid of the curse, eliminate the demons, eliminate the evil magicians, tie them up so they can't do it to hurt you or anyone else. And then I go one extra step. I go after their entire network to shut down the network so they can't call any of their evil friends to come and help them as well. And that
And
makes everyone's life easier.
you'll see that too when people say that they have a poltergeist. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, well, I mean, these non-physical entities come in all shapes and forms. Uh, some years ago, one of the forms that was very hard on humans were the jinn.
right.
The jinn is what the genie in Aladdin's lamp is named after the jinn. And the jinn are non-physical entities, but they're ferocious warriors. They're very strong. And typically, these evil magicians would enlist the jinn, usually through blackmail or bribery, to harm humans. And they were among the most fearsome adversaries that I had to deal with. But one of my friends happened to be in a different lifetime a king of one of the jinn kingdoms. So he gave me a word to use to greet them in their native language to stop them. Say, wait a second, how does this guy know this? And then I tell them, look, we don't have to fight anymore. You don't have to harm humans. I'm going to help you. And the way I'm going to help you the most is I'm going to get rid of the ones who have you under spell or contract. I'm going to get rid of them so you're free. And when you're free, you leave the human, my client, alone, and you won't have to do this anymore. And so initially they were a little reluctant to believe me, but then they saw that I always speak the truth. That's a good effort, good course of action to always take. Always say what you're going to do and always do what you're going to say. So I always did what I said that I would do, and they realized that I was trustworthy, even though we were adversaries initially. They went along with this, and eventually the jinn, just like we are ascending to a higher consciousness, they also did the same thing. And so now I don't come across the jinn very often anymore. It took 6 months to a year before they started to leave humans alone, but now everything's better. So that's one less thing for humans to worry about, and the world is better for that.
So what were they originally, like spirits that could take a earthbound form?
Yeah, yeah. Well, they don't even take an earthbound form. Most of
Right.
these
But
entities that bug
they can
people,
come down into our sphere.
yeah, they can be in like our 4D world, our
Right.
dream state. Now, to them, it's a very real world. To us, we can't see them, or most people can't see them, or
Right.
feel them, or sense them. You just know that you feel bad, or weighted, or whatever this little problem you used to have is blown up into a major crisis, and that's the work of any entity if they're trying to harm you. And that was what the jinn used to do, but now they're not really a problem anymore. I mean,
So I'm going to
they're
say that
ascending too.
because I'm always reading, but 19th century literature, what was written in the 1800s, is full of references to this and to demons and
Right.
all the magical books. They're full of it. So it's not like we're talking about something that's new. I do want to point out that on the other side, they're angels, they're higher beings, they're ascended masters. They're probably more good forces. I kind of think that because the earth is flip-flopping energetically between negativity and positivity, that's why we're seeing so much of this right now.
Right. This is the time of where people have to make a choice. Which side do they want to be on? Side of the negative that continues with the prolongs our misery here on this earth, or the kind that is going to uplift and help other people. The golden rule that all the great religions and spiritual traditions talk about: do unto others as you have them do unto you. If you believe that, then you're going to move up to this higher consciousness, and that's what we're undergoing right now, waking up and making a choice. Which way do you want to go? And I know it's inevitable that the helpful ones win. We're going to win. There's no doubt about it. There are, and that's the other thing. Many of the when I talked about the Pleiades, there are other star systems. Some of them were not especially positive, and for the most part, they're no longer influencing humanity. They're
Right.
not there.
That
It's
was
only
turned off.
well, yeah, they were chased away in a sense. They're only the people that are incarnate on Earth now on the surface of the planet are basically uh, of those negative stellar races. And right now, the ones helping us are the Pleiadians, Arcturians, Andromedans, Sirians, all the our older brothers and sisters from the other star systems here to help us ascend and watching us to see what it's like for see a planet move into a higher density.
Because if you think about it, we're not reading about abductions anymore. All those books are gone, all those references to the Greys are gone. That's not even
Right.
something they talk anybody, you know what I'm saying? It was mainstream and it's going away. But I think that probably some of the people from other planets or higher spheres are even mistaken to be angels.
Right. Yeah. How would you know the difference?
I don't
You would
think you
know the
could.
difference. All you know is that they're helping you. And that's one of the things people ask, well, how do I know if this spirit being is good or bad? I said, well, you will know them by their fruit. Are they encouraging you? Are they empowering you, telling you, don't give up, keep going, you're almost there, just like a loving parent? Or are they saying, oh, be scared, don't worry, you need to start worrying, things are horrible, just do what I say blindly and you'll be okay. That's not an enlightened being. Don't listen to them.
No. And I
Yeah,
figured something out years ago because it was like at first I had all these wonderful guides, but then people would show up or beings would show up in the astral world and it wouldn't be them. They would just be pretending to be them. So I learned, here's the question. Did you come from the light? And there'll be an
right,
immediate yes if they did, and there won't be an answer if they didn't.
right. That's another. You'll know them by their fruit. They'll tell you if you ask them.
I have to answer that question for some reason or other.
Yeah. I mean, there are higher beings that will lie to you. I mean, they exist. That's one
Right.
of the things that I had to wake up to is after I met my mentor and I was conversing with her telepathically, which I didn't think was even possible. I thought it was more science fiction. I realized it was true, but then there were other people that showed up that were
Right.
telling me things telepathically and leading me on. And then I realized he was a complete liar,
Yeah.
but he was
Yeah.
very
Those are the
skilled in the
ones that'll
psychic
say
arts.
we have all the answers.
Right. Well, he had a lot of power. He was very influential in what was going on in the world. He
Hmm.
proved it to me one time. He asked me my opinion of a certain old, retired for many, many years political figure, and I said I didn't like him for all the reasons. He put him on CNN, Larry King Live interview like that next day. And yeah, it was like shocking. And Larry King's, well, we have a special guest. You know, it was a last minute thing that we had an opportunity to interview this guy, so we're going to bring him on. And he did this just to prove to me how powerful he was
Right.
and to get me to follow him. That if I basically followed him, you know, he would elevate me in the political world.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't get along with people telling me what to do. And he was some of the things he asked me to do. I said, "How is this helping anyone? I'm not doing that." And so they realized that they couldn't manipulate me. So that was
No,
the end
but
of that.
they do try, and they also try to do it in moments of anxiety. And that's when it
Right,
matters so much to get back to yourself.
right. And they took advantage of my weakness at that point. A company that I was running that I had started was out of business. It was external events that happened that made it impossible to continue. And I was as broke as you could possibly be. And so he says, "Oh, we can give you all the money you ever dreamed of and promised me everything in the world that anyone would ever want." But I didn't trust him. So I didn't take that off.
Right. So it is kind of a convoluted atmosphere right now. I think it's fair to say that.
Oh,
But
no,
what
I
you,
like what you're saying. Up is
yeah.
down, down is up, left is right, black is white. You can't tell with your conscious mind necessarily. It's very hard to discern just from what people say, or if you read a blog or something like that. Is this true? Is this false? You have to rely on your intuition
And
and
see if
use
it
your sense of
resonates
discernment.
with
Right,
your heart.
right. That's part of your intuition. Does it resonate with me? Does this sound true? Not just does it sound like some pie in the sky great thing, but does it sound true? Is this real, or is it another way of manipulating you by telling you something that you want to hear?
And
So you
usually
have to learn.
if it's truly spiritual, it's going to involve some work. Maybe not tons, but it's going to involve some work.
Right. Yeah. Well, especially when you're starting, you have to work and learn and things move in slow motion. But the higher and higher you get, the easier everything happens and the more
Yeah.
help you get, and the more synchronicities appear in your life. You wonder about, I don't know about this or that. This happened to me when I was waking up. I wondered if I can't remember what it was, but that day, a newspaper, a test or a subscription to a newspaper with the headline gave me the answer to the question that I was asking. That I didn't subscribe to this newspaper, just got delivered on my driveway one day. So those are the kind of things where synchronicities happen. What I used to also do when I'd be driving around and if I had to have a question, usually I like silence. I'm not listening to music all the time. And I'd say, okay, I have this question. I formulate it very precisely. And it's okay, let me see what the universe has to tell me about it. And I turn on the radio and I listen to the first song on the radio. And usually that would give me the answer to what I needed to know. Like
Hmm.
at one point, there was a woman who, same thing, promised all sorts of things, and I couldn't know, can I trust her or not? I was a little shaky. Then I turned on the radio, and then it was an old blues traveler song, which was "I will deceive you, I will lie to
Right.
you." It's like, damn, crystal clear. Okay, now that answered my question.
Right.
So yeah, when you're alert to it, the universe will help you to find the answers you're looking for.
Well, when I gave up the news, I asked the universe to please, if I needed to know something, to put it in my Facebook feed or to have someone email it to me. And it works.
Wow.
Anything I
Yeah.
really should know about, it happens. I mean, and that's just ridiculous that it would come through that way, but it does.
Right. Yeah. Well, this was before Facebook, and I had to
Right.
rely on
And they had to
the
use the radio.
broadcast radio before streaming or any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And But
So
yeah, they will
people
work either way.
play with these things. Like people will tell me I had an intuition, and I'll go like, I don't think that was quite it. And they'll say, well, how do you tell? I'm like, keep a list. See where you're usually right and where you're usually wrong. Because wherever we're
Right.
together, we're usually right. Wherever we still need to grow, there's a bigger, more room for mistakes.
Right.
And so keeping that list can tell you a lot about yourself, but so far no one's done it. Anyway, okay, so it's time for us to go to break. So I've been talking with Edwin Spina about moving into a higher vibration, changes in our physical world, changes that are going on now, and about both of our explorations in the mystical world. So stay tuned and we'll be right back. Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Griffin at OneTrueSelf.com, and I'm talking with Edwin Spina about mystical experiences. And one of the things we were talking about during the break is that it's not like we just meditate and we're intuitive. It's more like we explore and we are more scientific. So, Edwin, you want to tell them a little bit about that?
Right. When I describe myself as a mystic, people ask, well, what is this mysticism? And I explain it's a spiritual discipline aimed at direct communion with God or the ultimate reality. And part of it is intellectual understanding the nature of the universe, but the more important part is experiential. And that's what we do. We conduct experiments like we were talking about, like a good scientist would, to understand the nature of reality. And mysticism can be thought of as the merging of science, art, and spirituality. All of these are components of the world. And to me, mysticism also is where all the religions, the good religions, intersect,
So
not the one bad religion.
I was going to give them an example. When I first met the wolves, this is like 1 month into them talking to me and telling me essentially how to live my life, how to meditate, and sometimes glimpses of the future. So I went to see them like one Tuesday or Wednesday, and they said, your grandmother sent you a check for $100 and it will be there either Friday or Saturday. I'm thinking, right, sure. I'm talking to wolves in my head, and now I'm going to get a check for $100 from my grandmother. It's not my birthday, it's not Christmas, but there it was in the box. So again and again and again, over a period of several years, everything they said freaking came true. So that's why I
Right,
relied on them as a guide.
right. Yeah, synchronicities is another way to know you're on the right track.
Right,
When you think about something and it suddenly appears, it's not magic because your whole life is being orchestrated by your higher self.
right.
And when your conscious mind is thinking about the same thing and it happens, that means your conscious mind and your higher self are in line, you're in sync, and so it's
Yeah.
natural. And if we could see everything with
Mhm.
the omnivision or with
Right. That's
omniscience
close enough.
of
Yeah.
a higher being, then everything, the whole world would be a synchronicity.
So
We could see the interactions. Yeah,
I'll break it down for them a little more. What I actually wanted the $100 for is I'd always wanted a big herb garden. So listening to the wolves, I dug up about a third of my yard, but then I didn't have money for plants or seeds, and $100 was about what I needed. My grandmother really loved me, and plants and the earth give me great joy. So I imagine when she felt that desire for me, she thought, oh, she should have that, and put the check in
right,
the mail.
right.
You can break it down, but it's still a sort of a miracle.
It seems like a miracle to our conscious minds, but
Yeah,
from the higher world, everything's a synchronicity. There's no one thing happens in the universe in your life without the entire universe conspiring to make it so. So when you
right.
think of that, then you realize everything's connected. We are all part of the one thing.
It's logical. I always tell people don't worry about the how. Keep your mind focused on light and the result, and the how will take care of itself because it will
Right.
kick off something on a higher level if you stay with that.
It's a fundamental of all manifestation. Don't
Hmm.
worry about how you're going to get there, but see the end result and get as many senses involved as you possibly can. Not just see it, hear it, smell it, taste it, feel what it's like to have that desired outcome, and it's inevitable that it will happen. So it's sometimes just the question of how long does it take a true master can have it happen instantly. For us, it takes a little bit of time.
So what's your process? Do you check out things in a similar way when you get a message like sort of, let me see.
Yeah, I'll go to my recliner or outside a nice lounge chair, tune in, clean myself out, and then sometimes I visualize myself going higher, 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 higher,
Right.
until I get to the highest aspect I can on my own. And then I'll ask whoever seems to be the appropriate person to ask. Sometimes it could be an ascended master. Sometimes it could be someone on earth. I
Right.
want to find out if they're telling the truth or not. And I say, is this what you're really, and then you can feel what they're feeling.
I know.
Okay, he's lying. He's lying. All right. So now we know the answer to that question.
It's
So
like a
that's how I
connection
do it.
when it's the truth, though. You can feel two pieces come together when it's the
Right.
truth.
Well, I'll ask people. I said, is this true? And sometimes well, of course, like what else? And that's like a good answer. That's like the answer you'd expect if someone was telling you the truth. And that hemming and hawing, it's like a practiced liar who doesn't want to be caught, but they can't lie when you're conversing on this higher level. Well, if they're advanced enough, they can still lie, like that person I was telling you about who I learned was lying. You can lie even telepathically, but it's the average person can't. And
No.
if you go higher and higher, you'll get to a point where pretty much it's all truth. They can't lie. Even the practiced liars, dark arts practitioners, they can't deal with you at that level. So just another reason to keep raising your vibration.
And I think some of this is going to fall away.
What you
You
say,
know,
fall away?
all
Oh
the
yeah, the
people
negativity.
that try to come in and tell us, yeah, you need to do this. And I'm like, that just doesn't feel right.
Right. Yeah, this is one of the fundamentals I talk about. You exist on all these different levels. You have a physical body, but you have emotional, mental, spiritual bodies of increasingly higher vibration. At the apex of your existence, your I am presence, where your individuated consciousness is formed and comes down to you. And your job is to tap into the highest aspects of yourself and bring that love and wisdom down and share it with the world.
Hmm.
And you can do that. There's over 7 billion people on earth right now. There's over 7 billion different ways you can share your love and wisdom with the world. And if someone tells you, oh, no, that's not spiritual, you need to do this or that, you can pretty much ignore anything else they tell you, because that is just not the true mystic and spiritual principle. It's you have complete freedom to do whatever you want as long as you're not harming anyone else or infringing on their freedom.
Right.
So there's billions of ways to do whatever you want to do, and don't let anyone tell you uh, what to do or what's spiritual or this or it's good for the collective good. That's another lying
I know.
way of tricking people into doing things, relying on their goodness to manipulate them. If they're telling you what to do, it's usually wrong.
I think it's better too to have choices. You know, like even if I teach an exercise, I'll say if you hear within yourself to use a different color to change it around, please do that. Don't do it
Right,
my way, change it.
right. Yeah, same thing. I'll have exercises. If it doesn't work, pick a different one or choose this or modify it slightly to make it work for you.
Yeah.
So there's no one absolute way of doing anything.
I always say there are two exercises to do. One is the first are the exercises that really appeal to you and that you love. The other set of exercises are the ones you don't want to do.
Right. Well, yeah, people don't like working out,
That's
things
what I
like that,
mean.
but it could be good for you. Yeah.
It works the same way spiritually too, I think.
Right. So yeah, sometimes it's good to push yourself,
Hmm.
but it should be voluntary. Exactly. Exactly. Don't let anyone tell you, no, you should do this. Oh, if you're spiritual, you would do this, or you should. I don't want to even go into all the stupidity that the mainstream media and some alleged spiritual gurus are telling people to do, because once they start telling you what to do, like I said, it's almost always wrong.
We're going to lose your own self with that. I mean, it's like I'm more than happy to help tweak someone's manifestation, but I'm never going to make it up for them
Right. Yeah.
because then I'm telling them what to do. That's no
Right.
good.
Julia, from now on, you can't look at the stars. That's not what spiritual people do. You should only look at the ground.
Right.
That would be an insane thing to say, but that's the equivalent of what some of these spiritual gurus tell you.
I know. Or I should only look at certain stars. Right?
Okay, no, that's sadly true.
Yeah. Okay. So for all the people out there who are listening and you're trying to figure out what to do, I would say get something going in the morning where you're meditating or thinking good thoughts or focusing on it. And then the other thing is at night, I bring like a light into my body and relax. And then I hold on to a positive thought as I go to sleep. Would you want to add to that?
No, that's exactly it. The exact opposite is a funny story of someone who I gave them a clearing and they felt very good. And the next day they complained. They said, I was feeling great, all day after the clearing. Then I went to sleep and I woke up and I was in a bad mood. I said, well, what did you do before that? She says, nothing. I just watched the news and went to sleep. It's like it's so obvious. Well, you just filled your mind with that mental poison that's just filled with lies and meant to make you be fearful and keep your vibration low. So, of course, you undid many of the benefits of my clearing. So,
Right.
like, don't do that. It's the exact
Hmm.
opposite. Don't do that. Instead, listen to beautiful music, read a poem, meditate on some spiritual teaching, or just hang out in nature. I love hanging out in nature. Maybe
Hmm.
not immediately before I go to sleep, but that's my avenue to get
Oh,
grounded and to clear myself.
yeah, I get my cup of coffee and sit on the deck and look at the woods and all the animals and the plants. And then I have my cup of coffee and then I meditate. So that works pretty well for
Right.
me
Yeah. That's
because I've already just thought, oh my gosh, what an amazing world it is.
right. Yeah. Nature. No one can compete with nature. I mean,
No.
mankind, some pharmacists can't compete with the food and the wonders of nature. So, like, don't do that. Stick with the basics. Go back to the basics.
Okay, so here's a common question that I'm asked, and I do my best with it. But what do people do when they're out in public and they start to get agitated? I don't stay out too long if I feel that way. I'm like, okay, I'll finish this errand and go home. I don't have to
Right.
stay here for 2 or 3 hours and all these people.
Right. Uh, I mean, that's good advice. Don't do something that makes you agitated and that. What I used to experience when I was first getting more and more spiritual, and I had my energy mentor, who every week he would pump my energy up, then slowly would come down over the course of the week. The next week he'd pump it up, and slowly
Hmm.
would come down. But it was ratcheting upwards over time. Now, initially, when your energy gets higher, you become a bigger magnet. And one of my things I loved to do back then was drink microbrewed beers. So on a Friday afternoon, I'd go over to the local brewery where they make beer, fresh beer all the time. But at the same time, as I'm enjoying this delicious beer, everyone else is there on Friday afternoon after a week of torment in their office and wherever they were working, unloading all the junk that they picked up during the week. And as a magnet, I was picking it up and taking it in. I said, I can't even do it, just like you were saying. This is not pleasurable. I can't even go to
Right,
do one of my favorite things. So I had to take a few months off. But in the meantime, my energy was growing higher and higher. And then after a few months, I was able to go back and my energy was radiating out enough positive energy that it would keep the negative away. In fact, I would help them just from being in their presence. They don't know.
right.
All they know is here's this guy who's enjoying a nice IPA next to me, but I'm helping them. So that's something that people can look forward to. And some of you may already be past that, this inflection point where you become a bigger magnet and then it changes where you're able to radiate out your energy, good energy, positive energy to the rest of the world and make the world a better place where it
Right.
doesn't affect you as much.
And sometimes it's going to change depending on your physical and your spiritual energy level.
Right. If you're sick for whatever reason or you're
You didn't
overworked or that,
sleep.
yeah,
Yeah.
all these things that it doesn't matter if you're a mystic or if you're just a person who's just learning about spirituality. You should
Yeah.
take care of your body and body is a temple of your soul, as you know. So take care of your body, get enough sleep, eat the right food, don't have too many beers, you know,
That's obvious.
yeah, and eat
Then
the most
the
wholesome food you can, right?
The other thing is people seem so apologetic about having boundaries. So I want to say this. If it keeps you from being who you really are, it exhausts you, then make a boundary. You're not supposed to please everybody anyway.
Right. Yeah, it's not your job to please everybody, and that's how a narcissist who's self-involved preys upon a wholesome, healthy spiritual person. They make that person feel guilty, and they, as soon as you feel guilty, oh, I'm sorry, did I offend you? Then they suck your energy right out of
Yeah.
it. And so, yeah, that
So
should be a
don't be
warning.
apologetic
Don't.
about getting what you need out of relationships.
Right,
Because if you're listening to this and you've gotten this far into the interview, you probably have plenty of good energy. And there are lots of people who want your energy to come down so you're on their level because they don't want to come
right,
up to where you are unless they're growing.
right. Yeah, and somewhat related. A wise man can learn more from a fool than a fool from a wise man. So be open-minded in all your interactions with all your relationships. Many of you're going to learn from everyone if you have the right mindset.
Yeah, and it can be compassion because I know one day I was working and I was studying so much and I had a break and I was studying spiritual things. And I went outside and there was this guy I knew him. He had been in a car accident. There wasn't a lot up there, but he was lying underneath a cherry tree. And he was as close to being a tree or being in love with a tree of anyone I've
Yeah,
ever seen. If there was universal consciousness anywhere, it was there. And I thought, okay, this is how you broaden your consciousness. You allow for
right.
all these different ways of expression from universal good.
Yeah. Well, that's a good example of grounding. You know,
Yeah,
on the ground, merging with the tree. What
with your
can be
petals
better?
falling down on him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there are lots of things like that. So I think as we're getting to the end, I would love to tell our listeners about your book, The Mystic Warrior, because that was a cool book. And you had lots of adventure stuff in it too.
Right. Yeah, it's a thriller with spiritual
Yeah,
overtones. And the heroes of the book are mystics who are practicing these advanced mystic skills like telepathy, remote viewing, astral projection, precognition. And when I was first trying to get this book published and or even find an agent, everyone would say, "Oh, we don't do science fiction." I said, "Well, this isn't science fiction." "Oh, well, we don't do fantasy." "Well, this isn't fantasy. This is the world. You just don't know about it yet." And anyway, I ended up self-publishing it, and I won, two national book awards for it because it's one of the first books of its kind where people are actually communicating telepathically, and the hero learns about the spiritual world through a lot of adventure, which also ties in with what goes on in the world. There's a famous quote from Benjamin Disraeli, who was the first Jewish prime minister of England. And he basically said, the world is governed by very different personages than what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes.
right.
And that's what's coming out now. All that is hidden is being revealed. And we're realizing that the people who you see if you were watching TV, which of course I recommend you don't, but the people you see on TV are not the ones making any of the rules up. It's never become more obvious than
I know.
today's political world.
It's a whole different world from what we are presented. There's no question about that.
Right. And in every way, everything, science, history, that's why it's so important to not be bogged down or tied into one stringent, rigid belief system or timeline because everything's changing. And I'll give you an example where, in one instance, my friend and I were working on a project, and he says, "Oh, we should put these two guys together. They could be complementary." So, okay, good idea. So we go to B. I call him Person B. Say, "Hey, Person A would be really helpful to your project." And he goes, "Oh, I already met with him. He came in with this other guy, and I had to throw him out of my office." I said, "Oh, okay, that's pretty dramatic." So I went back to Person A. I said, "Hey, we talked about Person B." He goes, "Well, yeah, that's pretty much what happened." So 6 months went by, and my friend said, "Look, maybe they'll let bygones be bygones. Let's try to put them together again." I said, "Okay." So we go back to B and say, "Hey, I know the first time it didn't work out, but you should really work with A." He goes, "Who?" I said, "Hey, I know you said you threw him out of your office." He said, I don't know any A." He said, "Do you have a picture?" And I whipped out my phone and showed him a picture. Here. He goes, "I
Right.
never met that guy." I said, "I'm thinking he forgot. We have to throw him out of his office." Okay. So then we go back to A. Good news. B forgot he ever met you. He goes, "Well, I never met him." I'm like, "What do you mean?" Because I know who he is, but I never met him. And so my friend was there with me. He says, "We're on a totally different timeline."
Hmm.
And so these are the kind of things that are happening in the world today. And what you thought was true one day may not even be true the next day.
Right.
So don't be rigidly holding on to some old belief or some old thing. Go with the flow, follow your intuition, and the most important thing, focus on that end goal. We don't know how we're going to get there, but we're going to get there. So, but the whole universe is so much more malleable than you would ever imagine. So it's more important than ever. Just focus on the end result and do good things.
And I think too, if I've noticed that things are manifesting a little differently. So if something's not happening, I'll say, well, what is it within myself? What energy is it within myself that I need to just let go of so this can happen? And a
Right,
lot of times it will change in just a few hours of having done that.
right,
Another thing I'll ask myself is, how should I see this differently? Does it need more energy? And are there any people in my life who are in the way of this manifestation? And those are
right,
pretty fun questions to ask.
right. If you just think when you're walking down the street, that's what you're literally doing. You're trusting that when you pick your foot up, that you're not anchored to where you used to be. You don't have to be anymore. You can lift your foot up and move forward and trust that you're going to put it in the right place to continue walking forward. So it's an unstable equilibrium. You're not anchored to the ground while you're there. You're walking, you're moving, and it requires you to let go of the past safe space where you were to move your foot forward.
Yeah, and I'll say that a different way because I have two cats and a big dog, and it's like it was everyone's feeding time, and I realized I'm stepping over a dog who's running between my legs. I've got a cat that keeps holding onto my ankle, and I thought,
Right,
and it never occurs to me that I'm going to fall, and I don't.
right,
But it's pretty
right.
amazing.
Yeah. Well, that cat obviously is a savvy cat because they know where the energy is coming from.
Yeah,
They're
they
latching
do.
on to get as much as they can.
Hmm. So I think that, we've covered that, but I think for people who are really stuck or they kind of have that dark world that they're in, that you can definitely help them. The
Right.
poltergeist feeling, yeah, you don't
Get
have to stay there.
get rid of the non-physical entities. Famous Jesus was always you read about him all the time. He went to a village, he cast out demons, and then he went and had healed people. So when they say he's casting out demons, it wasn't a figurative thing. He's casting out demons. This is
Right.
the reality of the world. And when you get rid of them, everything's easier. But then there's other things you can do to help someone. Clear their emotional body of all the anger, sadness, clear their mental body of all the old beliefs that some of them may no longer be helpful, or, again, pointing back at old problems that you used to have instead of the current situation where you are in the present to make a better future.
And that's something I
So,
think everyone has to work at in this moment is realizing that your emotions are not necessarily real. They're just how you feel in that particular second.
right. Yeah.
Because I'll think I'm sad,
You're
I'm tired, everything seems to be going wrong. And then I'll think, okay, you're better than this. Why don't we rewrite that? And then I'll think, okay, in an hour, I have plenty of energy. Everything is going well. Anyone I needed to hear from calls or writes. Yep, it'll happen. It's just not staying stuck in that blah emotion.
right. Yep. That's a fundamental truism. You are not your emotions because who's feeling the emotions? You are
Hmm.
not your thoughts because who's thinking these thoughts? It's the
I
higher
know.
self, the higher aspect of you that's feeling all these things. So it's
Well,
easier when you know that, let go of those
well,
unwanted emotions.
we're discarding that to get to the higher point, I think.
Right. Yeah, that's ballast that you don't need. Get rid of the negative emotions, get rid of the negative thinking, past problems, just let that go, focus in the present. It's fundamental truisms, and now it's more a scientific way of explaining it. Get rid of all those things that are weighing you down so you can be your higher self.
And then it's more fun. Okay, we're coming to the end. So, Ed, would you please tell everyone your website and where they can find you? And if you have any
Right.
upcoming activities.
Right. If you go to energycenterclearing.com, that's my healing website. And you can sign up for a higher self integration. That's where I do a private session with you to get rid of all those things, clear you, your whole family, go back to when you were a kid, clear that, any anger you may have had as a kid, even other lifetimes. And then now that I'm working with the masters, I bring in at least 3 or 4 masters every session as well. So energycenterclearing.com, and look for higher self integration on the top menu. And that's how you can find.
Yeah, that's great. And so you can go to my website and sign up for my newsletter, and you'll know what's going on with me. And I'll look forward to seeing everyone back. I'll see you all in a couple weeks. So thank you so much for being with me. Namaste.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Inspiration and Awakening Radio with Julia Griffin to master a higher frequency for a new state of mind. Join us next time as Julia takes us deeper into the memory of the moments of light where transcendence and enlightenment emerge. The memory of the jewel of consciousness is always lived within you to tap into waves of energy and create huge changes by imagining the beauty of the vision and desires that are hidden in the heart. Learn to find your way back to nature, beauty, and your own heart, which holds the secrets of your existence and future. To discover more about Julia's adventures, animal communication, and the teachings she brings to every show, visit onetrueself.com. That's onetrueself.com. That's ONE, trueself.com.